Welcome to the Be Your Own Boss podcast with Jigsaw. I'm Raashid Navlakhi, founder of Jigsaw Thinking. We're the home of the self-starters, and we hope you enjoyed the series that we're putting out for all the self-starters across India. In this podcast, we take a deep dive into entrepreneurial journeys of India's self-starters to understand their motivations, challenges, insights, and even insecurities. Our goal is to empower, support, and guide others who might be on a similar path. My name is Raashid Navlakhi. I'm the founder of Jigsaw Thinking, home of the self-starters, and I'll be your host. Today, we're joined by Dhwani. Dhwani is an entrepreneur, a consultant, and a conscious living advocate. She's also the founder of Distil, a conscious creative studio. Now, Dhwani, I can't do justice to what Distil are up to and what a conscious creative studio actually stands for. So why don't you explain to everybody listening in what Distil is all about?
Sure, of course. Thanks, Raashid, for the introduction. So Distil is a conscious creative studio, yes, very rightly. We work with purposeful businesses, and we basically help them with all things digital. So that could be content, marketing, social media, basically just everything under the sun that you can imagine falls into a digital marketing plan. The reason why we're called a conscious creative studio is because the way the Distil was set up, there was a lot of thought gone behind why these particular words define us. Conscious being not just in our working systems, but in how we sort of deliver to clients. And also because we wanted to kind of work in a different way where we are showing our clients that we're invested in their business. So that's why we're a more mindful setup to what a typical agency would look like. Mm-hmm. And so that's Distil for you.
That's amazing. It's really exciting to have you on, Dhwani, and I'm so excited. You're the first guest at our BYOB podcast. Yeah, very, very excited. Thank you. Applause for you. Thank you. Thanks for being our guinea pig. And I'm really excited, obviously, because we met at a pretty early stage of your journey with Distil and your entrepreneurial journey. But I think far more excited because we're good friends as well. So hopefully this is a bit easier than doing like a formal podcast with like an official guest, you know.
Yeah, I don't think I can ever be that.
Yeah, okay, so good. I'm glad you're going to make it a bit easy for me to get into this hosting shtick. Okay, awesome. So, Dhwani, as you know, this is the BYOB podcast, which means that you brought a drink for yourself as well. It might be hidden behind this amazing steel aluminum cup. But can you tell us what drink you brought and why you brought it?
So, my concealed little container carries a gin and soda. So I've carried a gin and soda because it signifies a sense of minimalism, which is absolutely completely made up just right now. I have no idea. I just carried a gin and soda because it's a drink that I really enjoy, and it's a good way to end a Thursday.
Yes, it's definitely a good way to end a Thursday. And I love the fact that you made up minimalism as your go-to, because I feel it's a very creative word where creatives use it an awful lot. When people ask them what their style is, they're like, we're minimalist. And that's a very cool thing to be. I've never really understood it,
Except I'm a practicing minimalist. So I'm not just saying it for the creative faff here.
Okay, well done, Dhwani. We will believe you and take your word for it. Thank you very much. I also have a gin and soda because that's what Dhwani told me to bring. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, so Dhwani, now that we have a little bit of a sweetener in our mouths ready to go, let's actually start with a couple of questions, right? And so my first one is obviously a good place to start as well at the start. So why did you decide to start your own business, Distil?
I don't think I ever fully decided to start my own business. I think, and Raashid, you know this from the time we spoke, and this was to be precise, this was November 2020. When we first spoke, where my options were, should I look for a new job? Should I move to a new country? Should I start something of my own? If I start something of my own, what is that going to look like? There were a lot of different options on the table, I would say. And I think the decision of starting I don't think it was ever there. I think the way that I would describe starting Distil was that it was a planned accident of sorts, where I just wanted to try this out. This vision seemed exciting. It seemed exciting when I was falling asleep. It seemed exciting. It still seemed exciting when I was waking up. So I was like, hey, that's a good sign. That's a way to kind of go about it. Let's just give this a shot and see where that takes us. So that's kind of how I would say I decided to start Distil, decided in quotation marks.
Awesome. I love that you use the word or the phrase planned accident, because I think it relates to so many entrepreneurs at the start of their journey. It never really feels, it's very rare, I feel like you do an MBA style thing to start your journey. So you don't end up going, here is my strategy, here is my plan, this is how I'm going to dominate the world. And that's what you're sort of taught in an MBA. Yeah. That's the flow. And then you're one day going to be super successful because, your plan's going to get into action immediately. But I think planned accident.
Does that ever happen to anyone?
I think it has in the movies, like a whole bunch. It constantly happens, and then they're an overnight success, and then people at home are wondering why entrepreneurs around them aren't overnight successes as well. Sorry, I'll go on a bit of a tirade because I hate the way entrepreneurs are portrayed in the media, but we'll do that another day, another podcast maybe. But I love planned accident. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it fits with my journey, certainly, obviously fits with yours and a whole lot of other self-starters as well. So Dhwani, I know, as you said, we spoke right at the beginning of your journey when you were toying, with multiple options, figuring out what you need to do.
While working 2 jobs. So.
Yeah, while you were doing all of that as well. And I always have put you in my mind, at least in the category of a multi-potentialite or a polymath, where you do like a whole bunch of stuff and you're good at a whole bunch of stuff. And so you're going to keep doing a whole bunch of stuff. So how has that worked out in your first year with Distil, where you've had a business that you're trying to build, but you've obviously still got so many passions that I'm guessing you want to give your energy to. So how has that worked out in your first year?
So just to recap before starting Distil, right? For me, I kind of started it with a 60-40 balance, with what I already had going on being the 40 and my 60 being Distil. So I knew I wanted to kind of build this out, but I did have a safety net. I had another consulting job and I ran a fashion blog, which I continue to do even today. So I did have that. So in my head, it was kind of like, okay, if this really doesn't work out, I know what to fall back on. Sure. And that was basically how I started. Now, obviously, over the year, Distil did take major priority. I would say I'm not adding up to 100 anymore, and I'm like pushing myself to add up to 120 and still continue to fit these things in. Because I still feel, like you said, like very passionately about blogging, about fashion, about doing all of these other little things. I write for a few blogs and publications otherwise. So there's a lot of like little bits that
classic
I like.
underachiever. Taking it chill, making sure you just chill out the whole time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Basically, like 2 days of work max. So it kind of started off that way, but over the year, obviously, Distil did take my major energy, thought, heart and soul, everything, basically. And I think now I'm just kind of in that place where I have these other little bits that are going on. In some ways, I feel very attached to it. In some ways, I feel like it still continues to define me, so I'm not ready to let go. But now I just have a new thing to add to that. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. But I would say it also was a very conscious decision to take that step back and say, okay, this year, let's put our heart and soul into this. The other things are established and we can come back to it. So I think it was that decision was very consciously made. It wasn't something that happened by accident.
Okay, awesome. And is that the plan for this year as well? So when you said that you're doing Distil 100% and, well, you've added another 20% from somewhere for the other stuff. Is that the plan for this year as well? Or do you see that being shaken up in any major way?
So this year, I would say that in some ways, the same, but in some ways different as well. So the math of it doesn't change drastically because I think my bigger focus still continues to be Distil. But I think my vision in terms of what I want to do for Distil has changed greatly in the past year. So I think just maybe tweaking what my role in Distil is, from year one being like my feet and hands and every single finger and toe into every part of the business, to kind of like defining my role a little better this year. But also, I think over the past few months, I've developed new passions, if you may, or new sort of collective visions, which I do want to see where that goes this year. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a hell of an adventure for the year coming up as well.
For sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm sure within your first year, and especially when you were starting off, there must have been like a bunch of challenges you faced, not particularly from a business sense. So I'm not talking about like sales and, customer retention and all of that stuff, but just for you as an entrepreneur and as a self-starter.
Yeah.
There must have been some challenges for you to make that transition, right? From doing a bunch of things, being a consultant to being an entrepreneur. Can you talk us through maybe one or two challenges that come to your mind that you had to face in your first year as a founder?
Okay, so one thing, Raashid, you make it sound super easy. When you say bunch of challenges, it was a challenge every single day. There were times I would just wake up in the middle of the night thinking about this whole thing, like, what am I doing? Who is ever going to take me seriously? And I continued to do that, like there are still going to be those days. You just learn to acknowledge it a lot better, I guess. But yeah, the bunch of challenges, there were quite a few, I would say. I think what was quite significant for me was I saw the whole imposter syndrome develop in a very new way that I'd never experienced before. In the sense that if I was sort of dealing with my team, I would think I'm not a good enough boss. If I was dealing with a client, I would think, who am I to call myself an agency? If I was dealing with, I don't know, someone else, another question would kind of crop up. So I think just starting out, everything was a question mark. Everything was, is this good enough? Am I doing the best? Why are people paying me for this? Do I even know what I'm doing? And I think that was a huge sort of barrier, or not, I wouldn't call it a barrier. I think it was just a hurdle to sort of overcome. And I don't think anyone in their life can completely overcome imposter syndrome. I don't think it's one of those things that you can say, here's 5 tips to overcome imposter syndrome. It's going to come.
But a bunch of people will say that on Instagram.
A bunch of people will, like a reel with them, like pointing fingers on like every side.
You've basically given us our next content idea. So thank you.
But basically, I think it's just one of those things that you learn to kind of understand your inner voice, or you learn to kind of validate yourself in different ways. And lucky for me, I had amazing clients who also validated us in amazing ways. So I think all of that helped kind of build that like confidence, validation, all of that, So I think starting out, it was just this whole like cluelessness. On some days you would just wake up being absolutely clueless, like, why am I doing this? What is the next step? And then you kind of, as an entrepreneur, also, if you're a solo self-starter, you're then thinking, and to be honest, none of us are good at everything, right? Like, I might be really good at the creative stuff, but I might not be good at accounts. And then suddenly you're like, my invoices look awful. Like, how am I going to manage all of this? Or what is my expenses template that I'm going to follow on Excel? So there's like a new question or a new fire to fight every day almost. And I think a lot of those times you start to question, am I good enough for this? Am I cut out for this? Did I like bite more than I could chew? But I think that's a lot of it is monkey noise. A lot of it is things that are in your head that you can kind of break down, or you will mess up once in a while, and that's fine. And I know that 1 year in, that day, if someone told me, yeah, you're going to mess up and you're going to be fine, I would have just ask them to leave. But basically, so I would say that was one big challenge. The other challenge that I remember...
If you don't mind me cutting you there for a minute,
Of course.
I feel like this challenge is worth diving
Delving
into
into?
maybe for a couple more minutes, because
Of
I feel like
course.
everyone has it.
Yeah.
And it shows up in different ways. But firstly, just want to say thank you for being vulnerable and sharing a challenge like that, because that's a real challenge, right?
Yeah.
It's something we face every day. And yes, I can definitely relate to waking up in the middle of the night, sometimes in tears, sometimes with a great idea that I want to note down that'll move the
Yeah.
business forward. I think we all have that.
And Raashid, the thing is, not enough people talk about it. Like, people make entrepreneurship seem like an upward graph, right? Like,
And a
it's
straight
just
upward
straight
graph.
upward
Yeah,
graph.
yeah.
And even on Instagram, like, if you look at, like, if for me, I was following other agencies, like, everything looks rosy and amazing, right? And then you start to think that you're the only one facing all of these problems, and
And
suddenly
that
it
spirals
becomes-
further, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I think we could do another 12-hour podcast on how social media and the media show entrepreneurship and why it gives the complete wrong picture. And I think what we talked about, that straight graph going up,
Yeah.
is one of the first things entrepreneurs need to get the hell out of their head. Because if they think anything's going to be a straight line, then they're not entrepreneurs. It's going to be a whole bunch of squiggly lines. And then
Yeah.
hopefully it's trending, upward. And that's about it.
Hopefully.
But when you talked about imposter syndrome and how you face it, the visual I got in my mind is, have you watched the movie Gladiator?
No.
No? Okay, so this is Russell Crowe
Yeah.
in the middle of the Colosseum in Rome with like armor, and he's got this huge sword.
Oh, I think I've seen a meme with, yeah.
Oh, of course you have. Okay, great. So
Hey, my job is on social media.
okay, so you're fine. So what's happening is he's battling all these enemies, and he's trying his best, but there's constantly more enemies coming in that he's got to battle.
Yeah.
And then there are 20,000 people screaming and booing him at the same time. And the visual I got was you being that gladiator. And then it's 20,000 of you screaming at you, being like, you've not got enough to beat these enemies. So it's pretty intense, I feel. And it might not be that intense every day, but there's some form of it happening. What shift have you made that has helped you on this journey? I'm not saying you've solved it, because
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that just gets solved. But
For sure.
what are one or two things you are doing to actively progress with this challenge or address it better?
So this whole idea of looking at wins obviously is something that is borrowed from Jigsaw, because we used to do that at the labs. And it's a really helpful practice. And what we do, it's kind of fun, but what we do on we have a separate Slack channel for this, but what we do on that is we set out goals for each month, which include our personal goals. It could be, there was a month where I knew I wasn't reading enough. So I said, you know what, I'm going to read 10 pages a day, and everyone holds me accountable. So that's basically something that we do. And that's one way of kind of looking back and saying, okay, we've come far. We've done things.
Yep.
There's always going to be a voice saying you're not doing enough. And more often than not, if I'm being completely honest, our voice is louder than the other voices. But I'm still in that process of training the other voices to become louder.
Gotcha.
So I think that's something that really helps. It also helps, and I think this is a very scary practice. Actually, I'm thinking about this now as we speak, but it was a very scary practice for me in the beginning, was to ask my clients for feedback. Because I was so scared of hearing criticism, right? Because when you're just starting out, you want to be sure of whatever you're doing, and any kind of like negative anything to sway that voice in your head is scary. But I think as we've sort of grown as a team, as us in the team, us with clients, I think one thing that's really helped is to just candidly speak to the people that I work with, which could be a client or my team, and say, hey, where are we doing really well and where are we going wrong? Because sometimes the way to shush that voice in your head is just to hear it from somebody who has an outsider's perspective onto what you're doing. And you sometimes realize that, hey, that's how you drown that voice out, basically. So, I think those are two things that have helped in some sense, I would say, with the imposter syndrome.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Also, it's just, I'm so excited that you're using words like wins, which is very, very exciting to me, because I've always felt, and I love, and the most important thing, of course, is that you're putting it in practice. That's the most important thing, as opposed to where it might have come from. But I think we always tell all of the self-starters we work with that they have to keep a track and reflect each week on what their wins were, what we call their wins in progress were, which is stuff you didn't sort of do too well that week. And if you just do that every week, then you're not going to drown yourself with this voice of, in 5 years, in my life, what have I done, etc., because you'll focus on the here and now and what's been happening and celebrate those as well. I love that you celebrate small wins, that you talk about personal wins that you have as well. So that's really, really exciting to me. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, the whole idea of also, like, now that you mentioned wins in progress, that's such a nice way of looking at what I would otherwise describe as things I just didn't get done.
Yeah.
Yeah, things I failed at, things
it's a very
I
nice way to
miserably
talk
failed
to
at.
yourself. Yeah.
So it's just such a nice way to say wins in progress.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, it
it's
makes you
just-
feel good,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you're making progress, you're fine.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So let's give those other voices a chance to shout louder than that inner voice telling you might not be good enough at something, right? So can you tell us, over the last year, just like we talked about a challenge and insecurity, can you tell us something that went, awesome, that you kicked ass at and it just went amazing, and brag about yourself and what you did for a little while?
That is incredibly hard. I hate that you put me on the spot with that. I'm awful at talking about stuff like this. As much as I can journal about it and quietly put it away and like take my, like with my incense on, and it's my little corner where I do this, I can't scream and shout. Wow,
mindfulness advocate for sure.
Oh,
Jeez,
fully. Okay. Like there's a full routine. There's like a skincare routine that
okay, no, whoa. I can see what you're doing here. We're not getting distracted, right?
Yes.
So I want to know about stuff you did amazingly in the last year, and I just want to spend a couple of minutes with us patting you on the back and celebrating what you've done.
Oh, okay. Okay, at the risk of coming off as really vain.
Whoa.
Right
no
now.
apologies, no context. Just like go for it. You kicked ass at something. What was it?
Okay. Distil has lasted and kicked ass for almost a year, which is win
Pretty
number
epic.
one.
Yeah.
We are a team of 5, which is amazing.
Yeah.
We're an amazing team as well. So that obviously...
Yeah, I've seen your team on Instagram and stuff doing amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, we get along really well, which is honestly like an additional win from the whole thing. Because like you want to go to work and like you want to enjoy meetings, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. Something that's pretty cool actually is 1 year in and we haven't done any active client acquisition. And we're really grateful for that, because there will be a day where we will do it, I'm sure. But for now, we're really grateful and we're working at max capacity, and work's come to us and work stayed with us. So it's been pretty fun.
This all sounds pretty amazing, Dhwani. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
This is amazing. Could you have thought that a year ago, this is where you would be? Did you ever think about where you were going to be at the end of your first year?
No. Honestly, it was too scary to think that. So I just said, hey, let's run with this and then see. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool to think of this now, and you're making me say it out loud, which is making it a whole lot more real, I would say.
But it is real. These are the amazing things you and your team have done, which is worth celebrating, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have worked with multiple industries, which is also really cool because I came from a fashion background. For years, I only worked in fashion. And then I started to diversify a little before I started Distil. And then over the year, all of us, we've worked in lifestyle products. We've done menswear. We've done clean beauty. We've done travel. We've done
branding agencies.
We've done real estate. We've basically looked at everything. So I think that's about it. Maybe there's more. I don't know. But that's quite a lot of industries to add as well. And I think that's been a huge, huge learning. We've worked with startups, we've worked with very established companies, both of which are extremely rewarding to work with in very different ways. We've I'm getting the hang of this.
You're getting good at celebrating yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, right?
It's been amazing. I've been like a leader for the first time in my life. I guess that's a personal win. So
I don't think you need the air quotes for leader anymore. Yeah. You're a leader. You're a bona fide leader. That's what you are.
Yeah,
so
I guess. Awesome. So that's been a fun one. And all in all, I think a really cool year. We've done content, we've done performance, we've done strategy, we've done lots of cool things, and all while not working on weekends and maintaining our work-life balance. And I think that is the biggest win.
That seems like a really, really big win. That you've done what I think 90% of founders don't do within their first year, because there's so much to figure out. They don't spend the time to put their core values in place and build a team, which you've obviously done. But I think what's rarer still, which is amazing that you've done, is you put your core values into practice consistently every day along with your team, which I think is really, really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would have done justice to the philosophy of Distil if I had started any other way, one. Two, if we had gotten too used to another way of working, where would we suddenly 3 years later realize, hey, we need work-life balance, and then try to fit it in?
Yeah.
If we didn't do it on day one, we wouldn't have ever done it. So that's something that, hashtag fact, that's something that we're very protective of. And I find the need to be, I feel like sometimes I'm overprotective of this philosophy, but I feel the need to be that so that those systems continue to run. Because there will be hectic times. There will be times where, Diwali campaigns across all clients suddenly, and then you're like, there's no end to how much work you can do on social media.
There'll always be a reason to break it.
Exactly. But where do we draw that line? Where do we set those boundaries? Not just for our well-being, but also to protect our client experience. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss when they think about this. They just think about it as like an arrogant system of work, where, you don't want to work hard and that's why you don't want to work weekends. No, I don't want to work weekends so that on Monday morning, I'm doing bloody good at whatever, like I'm doing a bloody awesome job at whatever I'm doing. And that's the thing that typically gets missed when you think of a system like this, right? So for me, it was very important that we set those systems in place, where we set those boundaries and where we were vocal about those boundaries, vocal enough to be able to work a certain way and to be able to then come back on a Monday morning, A, excited, B, delivering our best.
Awesome. This is pretty intense stuff. And I think a lot to learn. No, why are you sorry? This is great. It's intense, but it's real stuff, right? But what I'm going to do is maybe try and change the vibe, because vibe's a cool word that cool people use. I'm going to try and change the vibe by getting into a little segment we call Jaldi with Jigsaw, because there's a J, and it's really smart and cool. Shout out to Ayush who came up with it.
Amazing.
So we're going to do Jaldi with Jigsaw, which is basically me putting you on the spot consistently with like 10 questions.
You've been doing that already. It's fine.
Yeah, but we're just going to do it quicker. Okay. And so there are going to be some questions which very obviously have to be like one-word answers, I think.
Okay.
But there are going to be other questions that could become like 1-hour conversations, but I'm going to have to keep you to like 20 seconds.
Okay. I'm going to try my best. This is like... Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready. Awesome. Can I have a sip of my drink first?
You can.
Yes.
Your gin and soda, your minimal drink.
Yes.
Minimalist? Is it? I don't know. Cool. So, Jaldi with Jigsaw, are you ready?
Yes. No, I'm not. Okay, yes, I am.
Awesome. Okay. What is your superpower?
To-do lists.
Okay, awesome. How much do you actually work in a week?
Oh my God, no. All of everything that I said will come to shit. No, I work 30 to 40 hours a week and I do creative stuff for another 10.
Yeah, okay. Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
We'll let that slide.
Yeah.
Do you love or hate the Indian Shark Tank?
I haven't watched it because I already despise the idea of it.
Okay, why? I'm going to allow the Jaldi with Jigsaw to go another 10 seconds. Why do you hate the idea of it?
Because someone actually clouded my perception and said that it's basically roadies, but with 100. So,
jeez. Okay, that's pretty harsh.
So
just because it has the same hosts, I don't think that means.
Yeah,
shout out to Run Vijay. I don't know what we're doing on this podcast now. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. What are your 3 most braggable qualities?
Punctuality.
Okay, well done.
Empathy. I don't know where I'm coming up with this from, but honestly, to-do list. I have to say that again. I'm really, really good. So if anyone listening to this podcast needs a to-do list or needs a system, you know who to call.
Awesome. So conscious creative studio with a twist of to-do lists. Great.
Exactly.
Awesome. When was the first time you cried as an entrepreneur?
Day -7.
Just thinking about it?
Yeah, just thinking about it. 100%. There were many days, and then there have been many days after. So
Well, yeah, that's why I said first time.
first time, yes.
Who do you consider your rock?
I think that would be my sister for many reasons. Like, she's my cheerleader, but also she's started a business 2 years ahead of me. So it's like I'm just following her footsteps. So yeah, no, and she's doing a bloody good job at it. So
Yeah,
it's
she's
a good-
amazing. We will get Chahat, founder of Salt & Co., definitely on this podcast at some point. What is something you do every day that most people would find unusual?
I plan my to-do lists a day before by the hour, and sometimes with 15-minute intervals.
What do you mean
as
by
well.
the hour? What does that mean?
So if I have certain things on my to-do list, it would say 9:30 to 10:45. This 10:45 to 11 movement break. 11 movement break is a new one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very impressive.
Yeah, but till the end of the day is already planned the previous evening before I switch off, because it's an easier way to switch off and not wake up unsure about what's going to happen for the rest of your
Very
day.
cool. Very cool. 3 words to define a jigsaw thinker.
Driven, community-led.
We'll count that as one. You have one more.
One word. Yes, thank you. And candid. I feel like everyone on Jigsaw was insane. Can I add another word? Brave. Brave. I think everyone on Jigsaw has been really brave, really candid. And I think the community is a huge part. At least from my experience, it was a huge, huge part of everything Jigsaw.
I mean, I think the community is the soul of Jigsaw Thinking anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that. Awesome. We'll have a couple of fun ones in there as well. Do you watch The Office? Or have you?
I watched one episode only.
So then this
Life.
next question of Michael versus Jim is not going to mean much to you.
No, it doesn't.
So we'll just skip it and move to the next one, which is coffee or tea?
Tea, but none. Water through the day. I don't drink anything else.
That's awesome. Shout out to all the non-caffeine drinkers. I don't drink any caffeine at any point unless it's Surekha Auntie's filter coffee, which is the best. We can talk about Surekha Auntie later. Okay. Do you like remote working or do you like working with people in person?
I like remote working, actually. We started off as a remote baby, so we've gotten very comfortable in that. And it gives me the flexibility to escape to Goa every now and then.
Yeah, which I know you love to do.
Yeah.
Hire or fire, which one do you think is harder?
Ooh, both. I feel higher.
You feel
though,
higher? is
finding
harder?
the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, which do you relate to more? Faster alone or farther together?
Father together for sure. Yeah, I would never say faster. Like, even if faster alone were true, I wouldn't subscribe to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. That was our fun Jaldi with Jigsaw. You did very well.
I did, right?
You answered all questions.
Yeah.
We found out you don't watch The Office. I don't know why you don't do that. You should. It's the best.
I'll add it to my to-do list.
Yes,
30
and
minutes.
then we'll come back and do another podcast where I can ask you that question.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, cool. So now we'll get to maybe last couple of questions.
Okay.
Right? Okay, but it doesn't have to be Jaldi with Jigsaw. You can take a breath. You can relax. Okay, so I think you know this very well, that I love all things Disney and I'm a Potterhead. I love Harry Potter.
Again, I feel like I'm raining on your parade majorly, but I haven't.
You're not going to have to know Harry Potter for this
Okay,
one.
thank you.
But
I think
I'm
everyone
gonna have
listening,
to
this is
plug
where
it.
they all drop off anyway. They're like, we don't want to hear from her. She hasn't even read all the books.
Listen to Dhwani. She has great things to say. And someday, somehow, I will get her to read Harry Potter. That's my commitment. Okay. So in Harry Potter, Dumbledore says this amazing thing. He says, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." What
Wow.
is a choice that you have made over the past year that you think defines who you are? It could be small, it could be big, it could be anything. But I'm asking you this question because I think one of the things entrepreneurs need to do every day is make decisions. And each decision is more complicated than the other. So what's a decision that you've made that you're happy you stood by?
I don't think there's a groundbreaking decision or a choice that I've made. I mean, I don't know if this will sound either it could sound very plain Jane or very overly philosophical, but I think year one especially, it's the choice to show up, the choice to kind of come every day, and on days you're messing up, but to come and try and fix that, or on days you're doing really well, and just see how you can continue that or how you can build a system out of it to make sure that continues. I think it's just been that.
And that's a decision you have to make
choice,
every
I
day,
guess.
right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that you said that because, as you know, that's at the core of who we are as people, the trying to get people to get the drive to show up every day. Because if you show up and you show up with all of yourself, then you're quite likely to do fairly well. I just restarted my fitness journey because I stop it every 6 months because I give up, but I'm trying again.
New year, new you, Raashid.
But in February, I gave myself a month for some reason. But the important thing is that my fitness trainer said something that I realized I say to all the Jigsaw thinkers as well. And I realized I needed to hear it. Where I said, okay, how do I improve this? How do I improve that? What do I need to do? And he literally just looked me dead in the eye and said, show up. All you have to do is show up.
Yeah.
And then everything else will take care of itself. And I think that's so true as an entrepreneur. So I love that you said that. That is a big decision, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Dhwani, we have talked for a long time.
Yeah.
We've also had deep conversations. I feel like we've had some fun and I'm running out of my drink. So we're going to wrap this podcast up a little bit. But before that, I'm going to ask you two final questions.
Okay.
The first question is that my favorite quote that we use at Jigsaw Thinking all the time is you're always one version away from perfection. Mm-hmm. And so you're always versioning up. What is Dhwani's next version, or what is Distil's next version?
I think our next version, and it's a very interesting time that we're doing this podcast and that you've asked me this, because this particular year in general for us as a team has been challenging. It's been, in a lot of ways, it's been difficult from like a personal front. We've had to all take time off work. We've all had to kind of attend to many different things. And that also kind of fueled some reflection. And I think the next version for, I would separate next version for Distil and next version for Dhwani. But the next version for Distil, I think, is where we come back with, so we have systems and we have systems that are working well, but we're already kind of brainstorming on how we can make these systems just a little more stronger, just a little more easier for our clients, like where we're, like one-upping on our output, but also being mindful of our time. So like striking that balance. And I think system is that bridge, like putting a good system in place is the bridge to be able to do both. So I think that's something that we're internally working on. And I think Distil 2.0, if you may, because year 2 will include a lot of that. And we're finally, I think, a year after, and now that I've said it on on a podcast, I have to hold myself accountable to it. The Distil website is going to be up soon.
Yes, awesome. We're all waiting for that.
Yeah, so I think a lot more time into our personal branding, our personal sort of marketing. And we're starting this cool thing called the Upskill Hour at the office. So where we do 1 hour where all of us sort of spend an hour doing something completely non-client related, but like a new skill we may want to learn, or an article that like has been, or a newsletter that's been in our inbox but we haven't had the time to learn. So just to kind of grow more creatively, but not with the pressure of like delivering work, but just for ourselves.
Awesome.
So those are some new things that are in the pipeline with Distil. And I think with all of that in place, you'll just see a cool version of Distil. Dhwani 2.0, which I'm really hoping to sort of incorporate this year, is one, like I said, to define my role at the company a lot better, I would say, so I find it really hard. And as an entrepreneur, it's your baby. You find it really hard I remember the first time I was taking leave, I told my team, like, this is my child and I'm leaving this with you. And I was this anxious mother going away on leave. But I think just getting a little more comfortable and building more time for work, life, and everything that is included in the middle of it, is going to be Dhwani 2.0.
Awesome.
Less imposter, more cheerleader.
Oh, wow. You've like stitched it all together, haven't you? And you just made that up in your head right now. Beautiful.
Did, yes.
I love that. I love what you said as well, because I remember 2 or 3 years ago, I actually, to get myself to start letting go, because again, I'm a Disney head, I just listened to the Frozen soundtrack and then danced on it for a bit to tell myself that's my theme for the year. And I had a team member take a video of it. And now it exists on the record, which I did not plan. But yes, if anybody wants to see me dancing to Let It Go multiple times over, they can go to Instagram and see it. Which I do not recommend. Okay, final question, Dhwani, where we're going to do little thoda plugging of Jigsaw Thinking. So like get into plug mode now.
Done.
Okay.
Marketeer hat on.
Awesome. Okay, so Dhwani, you've been a great partner of Jigsaw Thinking, and Jigsaw has been a part of your journey over your first year with the business and being a founder. Could you just share with the self-starters that might be listening in what your journey with Jigsaw was like?
The journey with Jigsaw was a lot of like ebbs and flows, I would say. And there was a lot that happened, right, over the past year. And there was so many different ways through which I learned, I reflected, I looked at wins, learned how not to look at failures, how to look at failures. There were multiple things, right? So I think one thing was definitely perspective shift. I think our inner voices tell us to look at it in a certain way. And I think having you guys as coaches in some ways, or having that like third person telling you, hey, this is what's at hand. This is not the only way to look at it. Here's 3 more ways to look at it. Now you choose what makes more sense to you. I think just having someone coach you through that is very important, because when you're starting a business, mindset is everything. It's literally everything. And I think just having that like perspective shift or having the right mindset was so, so important. And I think that was a lot to do with Jigsaw. In fact, mostly to do with Jigsaw, to be honest. And the other thing was, for me personally, I think was just everyone that was a part of Jigsaw, because you kind of are interacting with all of these people and you're realizing, hey, I'm not the only one with these problems. Like everyone's going through this problem. And you realize that in some ways, everyone has a different take on the solution. So you're kind of experimenting together, which is really fun. And you're just kind of seeing where solutions go, and it eases off the anxiety, the fear of I'm in this alone. And in fact, you have someone to fall back on, someone to get a second opinion from, someone to like test your idea with, no matter how like crazy that idea may sound. So I think that's really fun. Like for me, it was from the name Distil. Like I think the Jigsaw community voted, and that's how we ended up with Distil. So like I tested a lot of stuff with the community and heard their perspective on it, which was obviously really, really great. And I think also adding value, like I know that we gave each other leads, we gave each other advice from our own areas of expertise, which is also really nice. And I think another thing was to have that weekly touch point. In some ways, it held me accountable. It told me that, okay, this is what progress looks like, or not like a set definition of it. Obviously, I set that own definition, but at least something where I knew that, okay, this is a win and I've committed to this win and I'm going to make it happen. So I think that was definitely another thing that being a part of Jigsaw helped me. Like I wouldn't say Distil wouldn't have happened without Jigsaw, but it definitely wouldn't have happened the way that it did if not for Jigsaw, like the kind of momentum, the kind of confidence that I approach problems with. And I think this is something that I tell other friends. I see myself telling other friends, and I realized when a friend was saying this back to me one day, and I realized that it actually came from Jigsaw, where I think one thing in the community was always no problem ever was unsolvable. And that mindset is something I never had pre-Jigsaw, where if there's a hurdle, it was either we solve it or we don't. Gotcha. There was never that mindset of, there's definitely something we can put in place to solve this, is how my attitude is now. So now, like, with anything, it's like, okay, this is a problem. How can we, like, problem solve more efficiently, effectively? Sure. That's something that didn't exist in my head at all, like, as a thought, as a concept, as anything. So I think that's definitely a huge part of how I now take that forward as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. You've articulated it better than I could have. But we're so glad that Jigsaw played a little role in Distil turning out the way it has. And hopefully we'll be able to partner. And even if we don't partner, I think we'll be cheering you on every step of the way. We're very, very excited about what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, exciting stuff. And no, for sure. I mean, honestly, Raashid, like I know like we're friends and I don't get to, like, I guess when you're friends with someone, you just take it for granted and you don't tell them how amazing the journey has been, but it really, really has been.
Dhwani, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Thank you for dealing with me as a host, and thank you for letting us be a part of your journey and Distil's journey as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I feel like I wouldn't have reflected on so many of those things if not for this podcast. So yeah, this is super, super fun.
Awesome. Obviously, we love championing Jigsaw thinkers. So for everybody who obviously wants to find out more about Dhwani and Distil, you can follow them on @distil.media on Instagram, where you can find out all about what a conscious creative studio actually does and the wonderful work that they do. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We're Jigsaw Thinking, home of the self-starters. If you're interested in being your own boss, head to jigsawthinking.com or drop us a DM @jigsawthinking on Instagram.